If your flesh tells you, I need to go respond to that person and let them know how I feel, and then you hear a voice within you like, now is not the time, you need to pay attention to that because God's ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts. He's wiser than us, and he knows what could potentially happen in that moment.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Coffee with Tea. I'm your host, Tanya Tyler. I'm excited because we're going to be talking to Miss Georgette, and we're going to talk about allowing God to write your story. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Miss Georgette to the show. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I'm going to turn the mic over to you to share a little bit more about who you are. But I always like to tell the audience like how we met. We met on a networking call, and I was impressed. I was watching you run because you're the mediator, you're the moderator of the evening, and I was like, I love what she's doing. How's she doing? And then when you accepted my invitation to connect, I was really like honored. So again, I just want to share how we met, but it's not me to share your story. I want to turn over to you, my friend. Please tell a little bit about who you are and, how did you get into the gig of moderating?
Yes. So a little bit about me. I am a speaker. I am a business owner, creator, content creator, that is. And so I absolutely love to speak in a way that empowers youth and millennials. That's my goal. I feel that today's youth and millennials definitely could just use more positive representation. I take the avenue of a faith-based approach because I am faith-based. And so I just believe that we need more of it. We don't see it enough necessarily where people are wholeheartedly true to their faith and their morals and their values, especially at a young age. I'm in my 20s. And so I just want to be that person that other young people can, have as an example and role model if possible. And so growing up, I actually did public speaking and performing arts. So it was kind of already in me. And then, of course, you go through that teenager stage where you're like, you know what? I don't want to be the odd one out. I don't want anyone to know me as that girl anymore. So it took me a while to get back into, public speaking and things like that. And so when I got the opportunity to become a host with Black Achievers, I knew that it was the first step for me moving back into, what I'm supposed to be doing. So, yes, I also have experience as a podcast manager. So I have worked with a few podcasts in the past, and, I went to school for journalism and mass communications. So I do enjoy everything to do with media, especially video media, video production. I love what you're doing, by the way, with video and your podcast and your channel. And that's the direction that I also want to move in as well. So that's just a little bit about me.
Well, like I said, I love your spirit, and like you said, we had a great one-on-one conversation before
We
this
did.
interview, and the thing is like for those who are we talk about on this channel, I try to aim towards transition stories and stuff like that, and trusting the journey, right? And
Yes.
when we had a conversation, I was like kind of I always share my story. I was like I was a little I guess you say intimidated by you at first, not like in a negative way, but like, how you see people doing the things that you want to do.
Mhm.
And you're like, oh my God, she connected with me. So I was sort of like in awe and I was intimidated.
Wow.
But the thing is, what really resonated with me is we had a lot in common with our stories and
Yes.
and even if we're in different ages, it doesn't matter because
It
the
doesn't.
story comes out the same. So, we're really talking about how we allowing God to write our stories. And I love your story. So can you share a little bit about how you started transitioning into, allowing God to form your journey story, and how has that looked for you?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And that was a great introduction. And I absolutely believe in, divine connections and divine relationships, because I believe that there are certain people who are just meant to connect with you on your path and your destiny. And, when we had our first conversation, we were just flowing, and it was like we had been friends or we knew each other, and just the chemistry there, I really felt, and it stuck with me. And I just appreciated that from that very first call with you, honestly. And like you said, I feel that age is just a number, it doesn't represent the companionship that someone can have with another or your maturity level, because there are people that you can meet who are So I'm in my 20s, but I sometimes meet people who are a couple decades older than me. And it's like, wow, age is really just a number. It does not, it doesn't reflect maturity. I can tell you that much. But yes, it's again a pleasure and an honor to be here. So just getting a little bit into my backstory. So growing up, I did tell you that I was in performing arts. My parents put me in dance at about the age of 3. So I had been in performing arts. I did jazz, ballet, tap. And then in school, I would join all the dance teams and I did step team and cheer here and there. And I also love to do like student council. I enjoyed doing morning announcements. And it was like, I didn't know how to not be involved. I didn't know how to not be active. That was just who I was. I was able to just balance doing a lot of different roles. And when you're young and you're like that, it is not easy to fit in. I, from a young age, knew like, okay, there's something about me and my journey that a lot of other young people are not necessarily able to connect with. You know what I'm saying? So after, I would say maybe preteen years, that's when I started to pull back because I was starting to feel the pressure of, what today's society expects of you as a teenager. And so I want to talk about the difference between allowing God to write your story and allowing the world to write your story, because there are certain points in a young person's life that the world will define as normal and that the world expects from you in your teenage years, in your 20s. You're supposed to be exploring, having fun, getting out there, living, just doing whatever you want to do, right? And so my lifestyle is unconventional in a sense because I don't follow the path of what the world says is normal or the world's standards, but I definitely experience that pressure. And so, again, as a teenager, you're trying to definitely find yourself. You're transitioning into that pre-adulthood mode. And I'm like, okay, I'm already different because I already want to be a part of every hobby and every extracurricular activity. And I'm tired of being that odd one, even though what I was doing was good. And it was like the adults could see that it was good. But, as a kid, you just constantly feel like people don't necessarily understand. And it got to a point where I wanted to just feel accepted. And so during my teenage years, I started to pull back and I didn't necessarily want to do what all the other young people were doing. But if I could just hide, I was good. That was enough for me because I was like, I'm done doing this whole spotlight leadership thing. This is not what I want to do. It's too much. I'm over it. And I just, for myself, I pulled back. And that was a part of my self-discovery, honestly. And, I just, for about 10 years, it was my teenage years up until early 20s. Nobody knew, the gifts that God had given me. Nobody knew that I was a speaker. I hid it so well. Even in class, when the teacher would call on people, I would know the answer or have a comment. I wouldn't even speak up. I wouldn't even raise my hand. It was just like I hid my identity so well that then it became hard for me to connect with the right people. Then it was hard to find the right friends. Then it was hard to, even in dating, to find the right type of guy for me. You know what I'm saying? Because I was hiding what I truly had in me because I didn't want to stand out too much. Then I started attracting the wrong type of people and I still didn't fit in. So it was like, what am I doing?
Right.
So it got to a point by mid 20s, I would say mid 20s, I said, you know what? This is a time where I'm going to sit down with God and really just heal and self-reflect and figure out who I am as a person. And so he took me through a process where it's I don't want to say like isolation, but it's kind of like he will take away the people that are not meant to be there, the boyfriend that's not meant to be there, just all the distractions, all the noise. He even allowed me to work from home just so that I could have that quiet time with him and just develop a new routine of life. And so that's what I experienced. He began to draw me closer to him in my quiet time. And I didn't have all of the noise of people and what they thought of me anymore. And I had already graduated. So it wasn't like I was on campus around these people anymore. And so during my alone time with God, that is when I started to realize that He has a very specific plan for me, and I need to allow Him to write my story, because unless I allow Him to write my story, I am going to constantly be lost in the sauce. I'm going to constantly be trying to figure it out. And, I was at a point in my early 20s where it was like anything that was trending in business, I wanted to try it, like drop shipping, just the goofiest stuff, I wanted to try it. And so it was hard for me to identify with my purpose because I wasn't being real with who He really created me to be.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's why I really wanted to talk about just allowing God to write your story. Because here's the thing, the world, if you allow the world and what the world expects of you to write your story, the world will put you in a box. The world will crunch you down to what is expected of the average Joe. And the world will not look at what's really deep within you. They don't know who you really are. They don't know the gifts that God gave you. And so the world just expects you get this particular type of job by this age, you get married here and there. And that may not be your plan or God's plan for you at all. Everybody is unique. And so you have to come to God and allow Him to write the story for you Himself, because He is the one that is the author of your story. The Bible says that He actually knew us before we were in our mother's womb. And so that means that He knew you before anyone knew you, even your parents. And so, of course, in the creation of who you are, He knew what He put in you. He knew the plan that He had for your life. And so who better to write your story than the one, your maker, the one who made you? So I had to get to that point with Him where I said, you know what, Lord, I need you to show me, who is this person? Because it's like I have all these ideas and dreams and I feel stuck. I don't even know how to get to the point where I can live it out, And that's pretty much where Diamonds in the Rough got started.
Like I said, I'm fascinated with your story because it, like you said, it doesn't determine your age, doesn't determine. It's like what you're looking for. And I wanted to pause for a whole moment because Georgette has been dropping some gems. Mm-hmm. And if you've been picking them up, please give us a thumbs up, maybe follow down with a comment below, because she's been dropping gems about how do you determine your faith. And I was taking notes because I always like to this is the part where I want to dive in a little bit more. And can you share, in this age of society where society is always putting more pressure on, and how do you, or I would say, what advice would you give to a young person or maybe an older person starting their spiritual journey and trying to figure out what their relationship is with God looks like? Can you share a little bit about, what did it look like for you, and maybe help somebody who's, trying to figure out what does this look like for me?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So everybody's journey and relationship with God is going to be a little different, but there are certain steps that we can take to help promote that relationship to be, fruitful. And so I would say you are going to have to quiet down the noise. That's the biggest thing, because social media, TV, the movies, everything we watch, we have the music that we're taking in. We have everything that we're bringing in with our eyes. So our ears are gates, our eyes are gates. And so if we are constantly filling ourselves up with what the world is showing us, what we see on the news, what we hear on the radio, and we're giving no time for God, it's hard for us to hear Him. It's hard for us to know if there is something that He's trying to show us. And so I say, if you want to develop that relationship even further, you're going to have to be intentional about having some quiet time, whether it's in the mornings before you start your day, which is ideal, honestly, before the day gets going, because you just never know what a day will bring. Before the day gets going, I would say make some time, some quiet time for God, just you and Him, read a daily devotional or something like that. It really helps just to get your day going. And I would say, just make sure that you're mindful of what you're listening to. Make sure that you're mindful of who you're watching. Is their life fruitful? Are they producing? Or are they just out there selfishly putting out content for attention, for whatever their selfish means are? So you really want to be mindful of what you're taking in, for sure.
Right. I love those. And I was taking notes, anybody who's watching me on the camera. So I was taking notes because she's been dropping some some ways that you can pay attention. And I love how you mentioned about pay attention, because the biggest thing is distracting us in society is everybody trying to get your attention. That's, to me, I
Yeah.
think it's one of the most valuable things you can give to a person is your
Yeah.
attention, first of all.
Ooh, yeah,
You
absolutely.
know, and then, getting quiet and actually like listening, not
Yes.
not trying to say give them a grocery list of I want this, I want this, I want this. It's like
That's huge.
be
That's huge
quiet and
though.
say what is coming back for you. And then, how do
Yeah.
you here's another question before we close up is how do you start to trust in that small voice that they start hearing, because a lot of people are, they hear the whispers, they get the like insight, but they don't trust their gut. How do
Yeah.
you build the trust with that?
That's huge. I would say you want to start paying attention to that voice that is the opposite of what you would naturally think or do. Like if your flesh tells you, I need to go respond to that person and let them know how I feel. And then you hear a voice within you like, now is not the time. You need to pay attention to that because God's ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts. He's wiser than us and he knows what could potentially happen in that moment. And he has a way of turning it around and making a particular situation much better than we expected. If we try to go off our feelings in a particular moment, it's not probably going to turn out as well as we expect. So I believe that it is best to just, pay attention to the quiet, the still small voice. And oftentimes you'll have a peace. It'll come with the peace. So you want to pay attention to wherever you feel peace. If there is someone who you're around, or if there is a source that is really making you feel uneasy, pay attention to that also, because that's probably not him. Because when he sends you a message, you should feel peace in it. It shouldn't feel disruptive, you know? But yeah, so just tying it up with being a diamond in the rough. I would just want to say, because I know that there are a lot of young people out there who are a diamond in the rough, who have a lot of potential, who have a lot of dreams and goals and aspirations, and they have no idea how to get that out. That's where I was in my early 20s. And so that is what really brought about my company, Diamonds in the Rough, my brand. I want to actually empower youth and millennials in their creative spaces and entrepreneurially. I want to give them the tools. I want to give them the resources. And I want to also shine the light on them for the incredible things that they're doing, because a lot of times they're doing great things, but nobody sees them. Nobody's heard of them before. So I have a brand where I help them with their branding and marketing, and I also help them in networking, because a lot of times they just need a connection. They need to be plugged in with the right person. And as you know, with me doing Black Achievers, I'm able to connect others with the right people. And then I also have my YouTube channel as well, where we talk about unconventional discussions, things that a lot of people don't want to cover. We're going to be real and raw about it, So, but my goal is to empower young people and to, of course, just give them the tools that they need to be successful in life.
Right. Well, Miss Georgette, you are have been dropping gems, and I want to close out with our last two questions. You sort of hit on the last one of the questions, but we'll re-wrap it back around. But what's the one thing you want people to take away from your interview today, if there's nothing else they can hear?
Oh, yes. The one thing that I would want someone to take away is to really sit down with God and get to know your purpose, because everyone has a purpose and you'll never be truly fulfilled until you're living and moving in your God-given purpose. Because if you're created for a reason, let's say the same way that you go to a store and you see the products on the shelves, they were created by a manufacturer. The manufacturer knew what that product was designed to do, and God is our manufacturer. So he knows when he created you what you were designed to do. So if you don't sit down with him and find out what he put in you, you'll never feel fulfilled. So that would be the key takeaway. Definitely get to know who you truly are. And oftentimes it is a reflection of what you were good at in your childhood, what you loved to do in your childhood. Go back to that inner child. So that's what I would say.
Thank you so much. And I know you talked about Diamonds in the Rough and you told us a little bit about what the services is fine, but can you tell us where can we find more information about you and connecting with you, and how do we find Diamonds in the Rough?
Thank you so much. So, yes, you can actually find me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Diamonds in the Rough. And Diamonds in the Rough TV is my YouTube channel. And so you can also contact me by email at info@diamondsintherough.net. And that's a great way to connect with me as well. I'm actually rebranding my website, but by the time this episode goes out, hopefully the new website will be up as well.
Yes, thank you so very much. And here's my unofficial question. You will be willing to come back and have a deeper dive, another conversation?
You know I would, of course.
Again, thank you so much, Miss Georgette, for sharing your insight and your wisdom with us. It was a pleasure hearing, your thoughts on how to connect and find your purpose in life.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure as well.
Thank you. And I want to remind everybody who tuned in that yes, feedback is always welcome. Remember, links and links that Georgette mentioned will be posted down in the description box below. So please make sure you check it out down there in the description box. And again, if you've enjoyed today's episode, please hit that like button. Let us know. Follow up with a comment down below. And again, if you want to continue getting the great insight like Miss Georgette shared today and other great guests that we have on our show, please hit that subscribe button over there. And again, take things in stride, go with the flow, and create your own path. And we will see you back here on another episode of Coffee with Tea. All right. Bye-bye.